Okay, we're recording now. All right, so we're talking about the trauma toolbox today, and I'm going to talk about ways to use this because once we kind of roll through the initial, what do we do when we get that phone call when a family is in crisis? Part of it is dealing with that right then, but then it's also what do we have to offer? Because a lot of times when you're talking with a foster parent, they either need to be reminded of some things or they need maybe some new tools or whatever. So, and this is kind of our cheat sheet of things as we go through this. Those of you that we go those of you that have done this before and are familiar, please chime in with some examples. Claire, you've seen this and used this. Stacy, I know you have. Jennifer, you've seen it. So as we go through, if you think of situations with specifically with families that would just help us make the illustrations, please chime in. This is not a monologue. So, and I'm going to attempt to do a share of the screen. Okay, has everybody got that? Everybody see it? Okay. Hopefully, I sent out an email yesterday so you could run one off and print it if you wanted to. And the reason I did it in this format was to leave space underneath each one for you to jot some notes to kind of what the descriptions are. A lot of these sound familiar, but I want to go through them and please, as we do these, ask questions about them, about how would you use this, how would you phrase it, when would you use it, that kind of thing. So well, let's jump into this. The first one on the list is reflective listening. It's the first one for a reason. It should be one of the most familiar ones to most of us. And it's first on the list for a couple of reasons. One is when we get our template going, which by the way, there's an initial version of it out, but I want input from all of you guys on from your experiences and what you've used that has worked and hadn't worked. I want input. Putting this template together is going to be a group effort. But the first thing on the template is using reflective listening. When you are talking to, anytime you're talking to somebody in crisis, or when a foster parent is talking with a kid in crisis, and all foster kids are in crisis all the time. So this really applies to most situations. Reflective listening, I think you know what it is. It's putting into statement form what you're hearing and what you're seeing. It is making comments about, wow, man, that's really tough, or whoa, you were so mad about that, or wow, that is really scary. It's putting into real words. You're not sounding like a robot. You don't want to sound like a TV psychologist or something. You want to sound like a real person, but you're communicating. The reflective listening says three things. It says, I'm here, I hear you, and I care. Those are that's what's communicated when you use reflective listening. Most of you are familiar with the book, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. That's my go-to parent training on how to use reflective listening, Faber and Maslish, and they have a lot of videos which are really good because you can actually hear what it sounds like in action. We need to hit foster parents over the head with this hammer on a regular basis, because it is the most important thing. It's the most important tool they can use, and it's one that's used the least. We don't think about it. None of us grew up hearing this. Our parents didn't use this with us. It's a different way of talking. It really works better when it becomes second nature. And it is the way that you stay connected to kids. What I explain to people is when I see kids in my private practice, I have I've got a child let's say a child with anxiety who's coming in to a doctor's office, they're already afraid they're going to get a shot. They don't know me. They've never been there. They're terrified. I have 45 minutes to build a relationship with them. 90% of what I do is reflective listening. And so it is the most powerful tool for connecting. And what's the most important thing that can happen in a foster placement, especially in the beginning, that you get connected. So when you're kind of going back to our crisis phone call, when you're talking with the parents, first of all, you're going to be using this with the parent. But then when we come around to how can we get things better, this is a place to go back and do reminders with them, or say, you know what, in the conversation right now, maybe let's just try, rather than let's tell them what they're doing wrong, or let's talk about the issue or whatever, maybe let's just try and listen to them and reflect back. And a lot of times, I mean, some of you that have used this, I know, I know, Stacy, you're familiar with this. It may happen at home a lot, but it has a de-escalating effect just using reflective listening. Anybody have any examples or any experience with this one particularly? Okay. So the next one is choices, and we're all familiar with this as well. There's different ways to use choices. We're familiar with a couple of kind of that you can do this, do you want to do this now, or do you want to do it in 5 minutes? Do you want to wear the red shirt, or you want to wear the green shirt? And then choices in terms of kind of understanding consequences. If you choose to go finish your chore, then you're choosing to, get your privilege for today. If you choose not to finish your chore, then you're choosing not to get your privilege. It's up to you. So those are two different kinds of choices. And then there are other just simple choices of letting children have input on their schedule, deciding when they're going to do homework, or when they're going to take their bath, or things like this. We know, but I think again we have to emphasize with our parents, this also is one of the most important techniques, because our key principle in helping foster kids heal is empowerment. They come from a place where they have no power, and as a result of that, they got hurt. And they come from a place where when the grown-ups are in control, bad things happen. So as foster parents come in and set boundaries and set rules and have expectations and all the normal things, while it provides a safe environment, it can feel threatening. It can feel, it can actually be triggering for them. And so it is important in every way possible to give kids, whether it's preschool age or high school age, it's important to give them some things they have control over, because they don't have control over much. And so as you're talking with, you've got a foster parent on the line, maybe you're having some conversation with the kid, one of the things to work into it is in a crisis, everybody's describing it as things are out of control, and the parent is feeling out of control. It can be very difficult to get a parent to want to give a child some choices. At that point, they may be wanting to clamp down. They may be wanting to, no, they did this, so this has to happen, and da da da. And so, but sometimes to help a child that's struggling and feels out of control, you have to do something that helps them feel like they're in control of something of themselves. So introducing the idea of choices in the middle of this, or maybe after you've got it de-escalated, can be difficult, but it's really, really important. So using choices in those different ways is another important tool in our toolbox. Reinforcing instead behavior. Most of you have heard me use this term before. What can they do instead? This is a replacement for our tendency to just try and get kids not to do something. Quit doing that. Quit hitting him. Quit throwing that. Quit running away. Quit. Just telling a child, especially if it's a child that already has some impulse control issues, which is all of them, just say don't is minimally effective, and probably, if it is effective, the longest period of time known to man that a child has quit something when a parent told them to quit is about 4 seconds. Okay. And then they're going to do it again, or they're going to do something else. So this is just kind of programming the idea of, instead of doing this, give them something they can do instead. Okay, if you're mad at your sibling, okay, let's don't throw this. Here, you can use your words, or here, you can hit the pillow, or you can do this, or if they're running amok at the store with you, you give them all a task. You go over here and get the can of tomatoes and bring it back over here, instead of just saying, don't run off, stay near me. So instead behavior, and this is important because you're also, the best discipline is also teaching. And what you're teaching them is not just that they have to walk around thinking of what not to do, but they need to walk around thinking of what they can do instead. One of my phrases with kids is, okay, or with parents and families, is we need to find ways they can be mad without getting in trouble. And those are instead behaviors. Okay. Empower differently is similar to this. And this really involves, when a foster child comes into care, they have a set of skills that they have used in their family of origin, to manage whatever is going on, to manage that crisis. And so they know how to get power. It may be their ways may be to escalate their anger, and that's the way that the people who are the maddest have control. They may be manipulative, they may be seductive, they may be, they've learned maladaptive ways to exert control. A tendency, again, kind of in the like with the reinforce instead behavior, is to try and get them not to do those things anymore. Okay, this is what you did in your family, but this is not the way we do it here. But again, if that's all you're doing, the problem is all you're doing is taking all those ways of having power away from them. And what does that make them? More helpless. Okay. And helplessness is going to be a trigger. It's going to trigger more acting out. It's going to trigger more anxiety. It's going to trigger withdrawal, whatever. So this is a mindset we want to put with our foster parents, is we don't want to just take power away from them. We want to empower them differently. It's like the teacher who has the kid who's constantly disruptive in class, and the teacher gives him a job. Okay, you're going to be the one to do this, or you're going to do this, or you're going to be my helper with this, or and so finding ways, whether it's techniques like use your words or things like that, or it literally is giving a sense of responsibility. This is an important thing, because again, it comes back to the idea of empowerment. Foster parents know this. They will give lip service to this. You explain it and they totally understand it. What happens is, in an emotional crisis, you're not thinking. They're not thinking, just like the kid is not thinking. And think about what happens to a foster parent in an emotional, when a kid's out of control. How does the foster parent feel? They feel out of control. They're emotionally out of control. What's their instinct? Their instinct is to do anything they can to get back in control. And that's where your power struggles originate. Okay. So it's, what we're trying to do here is kind of reiterate something that, and basically it's kind of with our foster parents the same way it is with our kids. The foster parents have this idea in their frontal lobe, but when a kid is out of control, they're reacting out of their own emotional part. And we have to get their frontal lobe to kick back in and say, yeah, I'm feeling scared, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling out of control, but I need to find a way. If I'm going to change things for this child, I've got to find a way to empower, give them some power, give them some control. Again, that kind of plays in with choices. That's what choices is about. So that can be a way to do it. So empower differently. This is a tough one to do under the when you're under fire.
Dr. Heath, I had a question.
Yes.
So in the instance that you're talking to a parent, right, they've called on call, or in pre-service training, they're asking these crazy, outrageous example questions of what do I do when, insert example here, when they're clearly struggling with this inner power control, right? Like they're wanting to be in control. What are some good examples that we can give to the adults in the room, the parents in the room?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so when I'll give you a partial answer, but I'm going to hold off on that until we talk about where
Perfect.
all this fits in with the whole de-escalation process.
Perfect.
Because one of the things to understand is these things we're going over today, you may not have a conversation about any of these when you're on the phone, when you're on the on-call phone call. Okay. So let me just give you a preview. The template we have that you're going to use when you've got families like this in crisis and all that. The goal of that template is only, how do we get through tonight? How do we stay safe tonight until we can talk about this tomorrow?
Gotcha.
Or how do we get through the weekend so we can talk about it on Monday? Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's it. You're not trying to fix the relationship. You're not trying to fix the kid. You're not doing any of that stuff at the point they're in crisis. You are de-escalating the foster parent. You're de-escalating the child, and you're coming up with whatever agreements are necessary to get you through to the next point, where then you come back and you deal with these things. Okay.
Right.
It's real important.
Nothing's going to be solved. Nothing's going to be solved that night anyways, right? We're all emotional and yeah.
Yeah. You will actually deflect those things. When they say, right, I've tried everything, I don't know what else to try. You deflect that. You're not going to go, well, here, I have a list. Let's go over these together. Right. Their brains aren't working at that point, just right, like the kid's brain is not working at that point. Gotcha. So you're going to, at the point of the crisis call, you're going to keep coming back to, what do we need to get through till tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Okay. So yes, at that, and now when you have the conversation the next day, or when the case manager does, or whatever, now you do have to start, how do we get this understanding? How do we work on the power struggle? We'll do all that then, but you don't do it in, you don't try and do it at 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
They're saying, my kids, come get my kid.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. Well, I think that's helpful to tell families in pre-service, right? Because they're not in the midst of that in that moment. So telling them you're not going to solve it at 11 p.m.
No.
That's okay. Yeah.
No,
that's good.
Yeah. That's one of the things, one of the things I learned this early on, and this is why I want you guys' input, because when I do crisis calls with clients, they're the ones in crisis. Very clearly, they're calling saying, I'm in crisis. When you get calls, even though the foster parent is the one in crisis, they're calling saying, my kid's in crisis. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic, but I still think the goal is the same thing, because if I got an after hours call from a client, I do not want to have a 45-minute therapy session. It is what they want. I guarantee you. Okay. It ain't what I want. And so I very quickly, I may start with, okay, tell me what's going on, what prompted your call. And I'll give them 2 or 3 minutes and I'll go, okay, hang on. What do we need to do to get through tomorrow? And then we can fix the rest of this. What do we need to do to keep you safe tonight? So that's going to be when we do our training on this, that's going to be the focus of that. And you're not going to try and do any of this stuff. So it's a good question. And it's important to understand. If you're thinking, how am I going to get all this stuff to them when I'm on the phone with them? You're not. Okay.
It's also hard if they're not your family and you don't know. So
Exactly.
that's another reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't know everything.
Okay, permission and prescription. I think most of you have probably heard of these before. It's prescribing the symptom is the hey, listen, when we're gonna have to stop playing the video game in 5 minutes, and I'll come back and give you a little warning, but I know it's going to make you really mad, and you probably are going to need to throw a fit, when I tell you no before we go take a bath. So I'm actually going to ask you a few minutes early so you'll have time, to have your fit and get over with, and then we'll go take our bath. So prescribing the symptom, telling or giving permission, which is similar, which is it's okay to, I know you're going to need to be mad and it's okay. Those things are, you can see immediately what the dynamic is here. First of all, the first thing to be sure and tell parents when they're using this is you cannot do it in a mocking way. It can't be sarcastic. It has to be real. It has to be, I really know it makes you mad, and however you choose to be mad, if you need to throw a fit, if you need to use your words, if you need to whatever, it's okay to have those feelings. And as soon as you get through with the feelings, then we're going to go have our bath. And prescribing the symptom, this is one of those tools in the power. This is kind of fits in the how to empower differently, because you've actually created a paradox now where if the kid is mad, if the kid throws a fit, he's minding you, he or she is minding you. So there's no power play. If they want to be defiant, they have to not throw a fit. Okay. So you've changed the game. The game they want to play is, I'm going to throw a fit and you can't make me stop. You've changed the game to, I think you probably need to throw a fit, but I can't make you throw a fit. Okay. And it's about, but it's also about, there's a little bit of acknowledging that emotions are okay. And like I said, it's kind of that giving a way to be mad without getting in trouble. And it's taking the power play out of it. And also the prescription and permission, well, prescription even more, allows the stop and think to work. So it can be things like, okay, I'm gonna come in and wake you up in the morning, and that always makes you really mad. How do you think you want to handle it? When I come in the morning, what do you think you're gonna do? What do you think you want to do? Do you need to yell? Do you need to do this? So in other words, you're talking about it. You're talking about it before the situation is happening, and you're getting a child to make a commitment. No, tomorrow I'm not going to be mad. Oh, whoa, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. Oh, really? Okay, I was not expecting that. Are you sure? Yeah. So the prescription or giving permission gets a child to think about their own behavior before it starts happening and make a decision about, we can, if you need to throw a fit, it's totally fine, but that's going to cut into your playtime. So do you want to use 10 minutes to throw a fit and then have 20 minutes on the computer? Or do you want to skip throwing a fit and do all 30 minutes on the computer? It's up to you. You can do, so again, it's giving a child control. It's getting the stop and think to work before the emotions kick in, and it's staying out of the power play thing. So these can be, when targeted in certain situations, these can be really powerful tools. Anybody have any parents or situations, or with your own kids, where you've used this? Everybody's mics are turned off, I know.
I haven't had to yet, but I'm waiting for it.
So Dr. Heath, I think after you taught me this, and then you also had me read the book about how to listen,
Yeah.
and I started using these scripts on my kids, and my son was like, "Mom, you're doing that weird thing again." And so it was really funny. Like he knew I was trying something different, but he stopped his behavior because he didn't
Uh-huh.
want me to get any weirder. So
It's always, I've had parents over the years come in and they'll start doing this and their kid will say, "Why are you talking like Dr. Heath?"
I tell Jamie that all the time.
Yeah.
We use a
Um,
lot with ours. The hey, I'm about to tell you something that's gonna make you mad, and then my little one will be like, "You're about to tell me to take a shower." Like she knows, but it has stopped a
Yeah.
lot of our struggle
Yeah.
with that because again, you prepped her, and then she was like, "I know."
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what the prediction, that's what that is that I'm predicting how you're going to react and you're going to need to do this. And it also has a bit of permission, you know, you're not going to get in trouble. I know you're going to have to do this. And so, again, these are really good tools for when you have that power struggle between parents. These are good ones because as a parent and you're using this, you do feel in control, even though you may be giving a kid permission to do something you really wish they wouldn't do, but it doesn't feel threatening to you when it happens. It's kind of interesting because the prediction part works on the child, but it works on the parent too, because you're also remembering, okay, I predicted they were going to do this. So it's I know several of you have heard me use this phrase before. You know, before you react, answer the question, am I surprised? And then the second part is, if you're not surprised, you don't get to act like it. Okay. Role play. So this is a neglected one. We know about this one, but it's hard to get parents to do this because parents don't think this way. They think like adults, and to role play, you really need to think more like a kid. What I explain to parents about role play is the way you teach the whole brain. Okay. When you simply give words, you give verbal instructions to a child, the total extent of that learning is frontal lobe. It goes into their frontal lobe. Now, think about what we've learned. You know, how is a 4-year-old's frontal lobe developed? How does trauma affect neurological development? And at what age does a person have a really fully functioning frontal lobe? Yeah, not till they're in their 20s. So unless they're still in foster care at that age, we shouldn't be working with that part of their brain only. And so role play, the reason role play is teaching their whole brain is you experience it. So you say, okay, I know when he comes up and cuts in line, you're standing in line and he cuts up and cuts in line, instead of hitting him, we're going to tell the teacher, or we're going to do this or whatever. Okay. All right. Let's do it. I'm going to be the other kid. Okay. You stand there and I'm going to come up and I'm going to butt in line and you're bumping up against them and they're laughing and they're all of that. And you have them raise their hand and, you know, somebody else is, and you can make it silly and you can make it fun. And when it's silly and fun, kids are not defensive. They're actually absorbing it more. When you're actually physically moving, when you're bumping into them, when you're doing all that, they're having a tactile experience. All these different parts of their brain are being lit up while you're teaching this lesson. And it's much more likely tomorrow when they get to school and the kid comes and butts in line and bumps up against them, instead of their brain immediately going to, I'm going to slug him, the brain's going to go, man, when mom did it, she bumped me a lot harder than that, you know, or something. It's going to, the different parts of their brain will remember the experience. So going through something verbally and then say, let's act it out. Let's play it out. let's do it. It's easy to do that with a 5 or a 6 or a 7-year-old. You can role play with a teenager. Okay. And honestly, their frontal lobes are not really functioning any better than the 4 or 5-year-old. So it really is important to do that. We know that in situations like, you know, when I'm working with families and the kid is 16 or 17 and they're going to get their first job and they've got an anxiety problem, okay, and they're just terrified of a interview. What do you think we're going to do? We're going to role play about 1,000 interviews. They're going to do it with parents. They're going to do it with me. They're going to look at them online. They're going to do over and over again. I can sit and tell them how to do an interview or what it's like. That means nothing. They need to actually act it out. And so role play is a neglected tool. And it's because, I think part of it is because it makes parents get out of their comfort zone. Some parents are good at this. They'll get in with the kids and bump and play. Some parents, you know, you can all think of, and you know, the parents you got that like, man, I'd never get them to do this. And that, you know, that may be, but it takes us out of our comfort zone. But again, the way to explain it is role playing is teaching their whole brain. And most parents get that they've had enough trauma training that they know if you tell them something, that information only went to their frontal lobe. Well, how often does your child use their frontal lobe when they react? Seldom. So you're giving them information that you know they're never going to use. So that's one of the ways to explain this one to them. You know, you're better off if you can put some of that information into a part of their brain that is likely to be working when they're in a difficult situation. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. Modeling, it's a similar kind of a thing, except modeling is, this one is a good one to bring up when what you're really trying to do is work on a parent's self-awareness. How often have you had a conversation where the parent is telling you what the child is doing and it feels like they're describing themselves? Okay. You know, they just don't listen to anything and they just, and they're just going off mad when, you know, and you're sitting there going, well, thank you for demonstrating everything you're talking about. And you look over and the child is sitting here like this, you know, doing nothing. And the parent is, you know, is the one doing it. So modeling is a way of bringing up self-awareness without offending people. Okay. So, and again, you know, modeling is, you know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But getting parents to figure out how to model and how do I model these things? But this one is a good one to use when you really are trying to mold the parent's behavior. And you can give specific things. I like to use, when I work with parents in private practice, I like to use the reflective listening thing. I like to use that as, you want to teach your kids how to listen. You know, my kids never listen to me. Okay, well, let's teach them how. How do you teach kids how to listen? Oh, you have to listen to them. You have to show them how. So then here's the technique. So you want to model the techniques. You want to use the language. You want to all that kind of stuff. So modeling is a good one. Again, when you're really when you're looking at the dynamic between the parent and the child, and you really need to target the parent end of it. And then so it gives you a positive reframe. And the reframe isn't, oh, as a parent, you're doing stuff wrong. The frame when you're using modeling is, oh, they don't know how. We have to show them. Let's figure out how to show them. And then you work on what can you do concretely. So Oh, modeling is a good one. Keep that one in your hat. Experiments. You know what this is. This is the solution focused reframe on trying to get people to attempt changes in behavior and patterns and things like that, and making it more palatable. So you just use the word. You know what? Let's run an experiment. Okay, why don't we use the word experiment? Experiment means, first of all, an experiment by definition means we don't know how it's going to come out. So when you say let's run an experiment, you're not setting yourself up as the expert. It's really important not to do that. You may have the best idea, the best parenting technique, the thing that if I can get him to do this, it's going to work. Don't ever say that. Don't ever tell them you have the answer, because all you're doing is setting yourself up for everyone to try and prove you wrong. And the other thing is if they do it and it works, it was still your idea. What we want it to be is their idea. We want them to decide that something works, whether it's a child or a parent. The other reason we use experiment is it's time limited. You're not telling them to do something different for the rest of their life. You're saying, let's try this week. Let's try it for this period of time. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but let's try it and see. Okay. Even if people, a lot of times, parents are already, they've got that thing up. No matter what you're going to tell them, they're going to tell you it's not going to work, or they're going to tell you they've already tried it, or they're going to do something, because that's where their defensiveness already is. When people are at that throw up their hands point, when they're making a crisis call and they're at the throw up their hands point, their brain has already decided, I have tried everything and it hasn't worked. They've already come to that conclusion. So when you're talking with them, they have tried everything and nothing has worked. That's why you're not going to go in through any of this while they're still in crisis, okay? Because they're just going to tell you, I've done that, it didn't work. The one time I did it, it didn't work. But when you're coming back the next day, even when we're putting ideas for change in, let's run an experiment. Don't know if it's going to work or not. Let's give it a try. The other thing about an experiment is it requires that you evaluate the response at the end. So we're going to try an experiment for a week, and I'm going to call you back next Monday, and we're going to talk about what worked and what didn't. And from that experiment, we're going to say, hey, this part worked. Okay, well, let's try it again. And then we're going to go, this part didn't work so good. Yeah, okay, well, let's figure out a new experiment. So you can go from experiment to experiment to experiment and make incremental changes without requiring a commitment. They don't have to commit to long-term change. They just have to commit to, let's try something this week. So that's where the experiments comes in. And this one, more than any others, this one, you have to use the word. You have to use the word experiments. Okay. You don't say, let's try something, or let's do something different or whatever, because in their mind, let's do something different means you have to be a different parent than you've ever known how to do, and you have to do something different than your parents did, and they're telling you you're doing everything wrong, and so experiment is, we're just trying something for a week and we have no idea if it's going to work or not. So scaling is our 1 to 10 scale. So we use scaling as a communication. On a 1 to 10 scale, where 10 is the best, 1 is the worst, where are your mad feelings today? They're about a 7. Oh, okay, that's pretty good. All right. Where are your scared feelings today? And with anxiety and scared, I tend to use 10 as a high anxiety and 1 as I'm chill, where's your depressed feelings today? Whatever. And even young kids can give you a number. They don't have words for, when you say, how are you feeling? What do you mean, how am I feeling? How do I describe that? How do I say that in words? I don't know. but almost everybody can say on a 1 to 10 scale, I'm about a 4. Oh, okay. All right. Good. And you kind of know what that means. The second part of using scaling is that it gives you the language to talk about change. So on a 1 to 10 scale, my scared feelings are at an 8 right now. Whoa, man, that's pretty scared. Wow. Okay. Well, let's think of what we can do to get that 8 to a 7. Okay. It's really important, and this is for parents to use. Parents use, I mean, we use this in therapy. So you can use this as a case manager, but the parents can use this in their day-to-day conversation with their kids. It's really important to use the scaling because nobody can, on scared feelings, nobody can go from an 8 to a 1. But almost everybody can go from an 8 to a 7. Okay, well, let's take 3 deep breaths and let's see what number we're at then. Okay, let's flap our arms and relax them. Let's move our shoulders. Let's have a picture of a cloud. We're going to float in a cloud for a while. Now, what number are we at? Okay, so we're making change incremental. And what does this go back to? When you're using this approach, when you're breaking it down and you're letting kids have these incremental successes, what does this go back to? You're empowering them. This goes back to our empowerment. Okay. Change is doable. Change is measurable. I can communicate it. I use scaling, like when kids, if I say your mood, 10 is the best I could possibly feel, 1 is the worst. Okay, what number do you get when you start thinking about hurting yourself? What number do you get to when you cut yourself? What number are you at? And it's interesting because kids can tell you, when I get to a 4, I'm going to cut. Okay. All right. So we need to be monitoring every day. And if we get to a 6 or a 5, we need to go talk to somebody. All right. And so now that you have an agreement with the parents, the foster parents, this is what you're going to do. And so scaling gives you a measurable way to talk about what's happening and then talk about changing it. Okay. Physical control really here just means that's a bad choice. It's just self-regulation. Okay. It's all those things about imagery, breathing, mindfulness, teaching kids to be in control themselves. And again, it addresses this whole power play thing. If it's not a parent's job to be in control of the child, it's a child's job to be in control themselves. And then, so all those tools that we have there, we know what those are. Code words, you can come up with different code words to signal when we need to stop and take a break, when I can feel myself getting mad, when we're out in public and I can feel a panic attack coming on, we have a secret word that we say. When I need you to, I can see that you're starting to get out of control and I need you to take 3 deep breaths. I have a code word, so I don't have to tell you, you're getting out of control, you need to take 3 deep breaths. I can use the control word. My all-time favorite, my classic, some of you have heard me use this one before. I had a family I was working with they would blow up and get into arguments and all this kind of stuff. So we tried to have a code word on when things were escalating. We need to stop the conversation, everybody take a break. And the youngest kid always in the family came up with the code word banana fritters. And exactly. And the parents looked at him and smiled and said, banana fritters? He said, yeah, because you can't say banana fritters and still be mad. And he was right. And they used it and they said, he would say banana, no matter what was going on, somebody would say banana fritters and everybody'd start laughing. And so anyway, so you can have code words that signal this is what we need to do. The last one is the response cost token system. And let me give you a brief, some of you have used this before. Let me give you a brief description of it. We could almost do a whole training on it by itself. Token system means exactly what it is. I use poker chips with my families, and that way, if you have more than one child, they each get a different. I tell people you don't have more than 3 children because there's really only 3 colors of poker chips. So you get to 4 or 5, you're really in trouble. And so you only target 2, 1, maybe 2, no more than 3 behaviors. Let's say you're trying to get them up and get ready for school in the morning. So the token system is, if you are, if you get up on your own and you have your breakfast and you're ready to go on time, you get 5 tokens. If you get up, but you don't make it to breakfast, but you're still ready to go, you can earn 4 tokens. If I have to come in and remind you or tell you it's time to wake up, I charge a token to do that. So I can come in and wake you up and you can still earn 4 tokens, but it costs a token for me to wake you up. If I have to come in twice, it costs you 2 tokens. If you are 5 minutes late to, to leaving, it costs you a token, or it costs you 2 tokens or whatever. If you are 10 minutes late, then instead of earning 5 tokens, you have to pay me 3 tokens. Okay, so this is the response cost. Basically, it's a sliding scale. If the child is doing everything exactly the way you want to, they max out what they can earn. If they mess up a little bit, they can still earn something. It's not an all or nothing. Most of the time, discipline stuff is all or nothing. Either you're up and ready or you're not. Okay. This gives, if the kid messes up and in their brain, they can go, okay, but if I get going, I can still get 4 tokens. You want to keep them motivated. Okay. It eventually can go into, if they really are, if they're really not doing it, then they have to go to their box of tokens and pay you. It isn't that you fine them or you charge them, it's their choosing to spend. So you can choose to earn 5 tokens in the morning, or you can choose to spend your tokens on laying in bed for another 20 minutes. This is where prediction comes in. You always use prediction with response cost, because what you say is, you go in the morning, and instead of saying it's time to get up, you say, hey, it's token time. I need to know how many tokens you're planning on getting today. You don't say time to get up, because that's an awful thing. Token time is a cool thing. So it's token time. How many are you planning on earning? Well, now they have to think, okay, well, what am I going to do? I want to earn all 5 because I'm trying to get enough tokens to buy this or whatever. So the kid says, I'm going to get 5. And you go, awesome, man, that is so cool. You remember what you have to do to get 5 tokens now? Okay, you got it. Man, I'm rooting for you. I'm going to go count those out right now because I think you can do it. You've got a whole positive interaction. You've made the child has made the commitment. And it's all based around rewarding positive behavior rather than punishing negative behavior. So response cost is a powerful system. We can talk about that more. We're out of time, but we can talk about it more if you want some more illustrations. This is the only positive reinforcement system I've ever found that works with ADHD kids. And it works really well with ADHD kids. So if in those kind of situations, and it works with all kids, but it works great. I use this with my kids when they were younger. The best years of my parenting life were when they got to an age where they got competitive and they tried to see who could earn the most tokens, and they were never spending them. So they were trying to outdo each other to do, bending over backwards. It didn't last long because I kind of figured out it was kind of a scam. But anyway, those were wonderful days when we got them competing with each other on how many tokens they could get. So, okay, we run through the toolbox. If you have, we don't have time now, but if you have questions, save them. We'll go through them. We can talk about more examples. Ask some of the people that have been doing this if you're not sure on something, and you guys can kind of help each other out. I want you to have these in your pocket, because then when we go through and talk about dealing with the crisis phone call, we're going to get through the crisis, but then there's going to be the follow-up the next day, and that's when you're going to pull these out. Does that make sense? That was a lot of information. Okay. Okay, I would entertain questions, but I need to get on with the counselors. So hopefully you all got the email and have a copy of this that you can keep a hard copy somewhere, or keep it where you need it. And hopefully, well, that'll end up being helpful someday. So, okie doke.
That's good.
Thank you, Dr. Heath.
Thank
Let
you.
me, okay. And I recorded this and it's saved on my computer, and I'll figure out how to get it to y'all somehow. So,
Thank
all right.
you.
I'll see y'all
Thank
later.
you.
Bye.